I live in a town where darkness is not a choice but a mandate, a holy decree etched into the very fabric of our lives. We call it the blind sanctuary. From the moment we take our first breath, tape is bound over our eyelids, sealing away the world. This isn't some passing ritual or outdated tradition. It's law. By the time we turn 18, the rite is completed with an act of permanence, the removal of our eyes. It's not merely about blindness. It's about devotion. Our Savior demands it, and we obey. The Savior's name is Henry, a figure of power and reverence in our town's lore. They say he stood against the angel Virgil, who descended to strip away our freedom. Freedom found in intoxication and indulgence. Virgil sought to take our wine, our rum, and our darkness, leaving us humble, sober, and frail. But Henry wouldn't bow. He defied the angel, earning Virgil's wrath. The stories say Virgil blinded Henry in a fiery confrontation before casting him into the depths of hell. Henry emerged victorious, not as a man but as a savior. Thanks to him, we drink in the comforting embrace of ignorance, shielded from the ugly truths of the world. We praise darkness, for it is our haven. Growing up, I believed this was the natural order. To question it would be to invite chaos into my life. The darkness was safe, familiar. It welcomed me and promised solace in its quiet embrace. I never doubted it, at least, not until the countdown to my 18th birthday began. That's when the whispers in my mind grew louder. The surgery loomed like a shadow over my thoughts. Soon, my eyes would be taken, and I would live in total darkness forever. It shouldn't have mattered. After all, the tape was already there. I was accustomed to it, comfortable even. But the knowledge that I could always peel back that layer of adhesive, even if forbidden, had been my unspoken reassurance. The idea of permanence, of never being able to see, burrowed into my mind like a parasite. I tried to suppress it, to bury it beneath the mantras and hymns to Henry, but the question remained. What would it feel like to see? It started as a passing thought, but quickly grew into an obsession. I knew the rules. The tape could only be removed to replace it, and even then, one must never open their eyes. The elders said the light would destroy us, corrupt us, turn us into something less than human. But were those words truth, or were they fear disguised as wisdom? I'd never seen the world, not once. What was it hiding from me? On the day of my surgery, I sat in the waiting room, surrounded by my family. They offered comforting words, praising my devotion and strength. Their voices were calm, soothing, but they couldn't quiet the storm in my mind. This was my last chance. If I wanted to see, to truly see, it had to be now. My fingers trembled as they hovered near the edge of the tape. Was it worth it? Could I risk everything for a single glimpse of what lay beyond the veil? I pulled the tape off. Light flooded my senses, more intense than anything I could have imagined. It was blinding, searing, and beautiful all at once. My breath hitched as my eyes adjusted, and I turned to face my family. That's when I saw them. They weren't wearing tape. Their eyes were wide open, staring at me with an expression I couldn't place. Anger, fear, perhaps even pity. "No!" someone screamed, the voice cracking with desperation. I couldn't tell who it was. My heart pounded as I stumbled backward, my mind reeling. What's going on? I demanded, my voice shaking. Why aren't you blind? Why don't you have tape? Their silence was deafening, more damning than any answer they could have given. The room seemed to close in around me, the light casting long, ominous shadows. I had always thought the darkness was safety. Now, I wasn't so sure. I staggered backward, my pulse racing as if trying to outrun the truth unraveling before me. My family, the ones who had guided me, nurtured me, stood before me, their faces fully revealed, their eyes unbound. They weren't blind. They never had been. The betrayal cut deeper than any blade ever could. "You've seen too much," my mother finally said, her voice trembling with something that wasn't quite anger but wasn't far from it either. "We tried to protect you." "Protect me?" I spat the words, my voice louder than I intended. My head spun, trying to reconcile the comforting lies I'd been fed my entire life with this horrifying truth. "You've been lying to me. To everyone." My father stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "It's not what you think," he began, but I cut him off. "Not what I think." My voice cracked, equal parts rage and despair. "You've made me live in darkness. You've made all of us live in darkness. And for what?" "For your safety," my father said, his tone firm but weary, as though he had rehearsed this argument countless times. "There are things in this world you're not meant to see, things that can destroy you." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Destroy me? Or destroy you?" My eyes scanned their faces, looking for any sign of remorse, but all I found was unease. "You don't understand," my older brother said, speaking for the first time. His voice was calm, measured. It made my skin crawl. "Henry saved us. He's the reason we have this life, this sanctuary. But there are rules. He's made sacrifices, and so have we. Everything we do is to honor him." "Henry?" I repeated, my voice dripping with disdain. "The same Henry who's supposed to be our savior? The one who's kept us blind, ignorant, and obedient? What kind of savior demands this?" My brother's jaw tightened, and his gaze sharpened. "You're speaking blasphemy." "Blasphemy?" I took a step closer, my fists clenched. "What's blasphemous is the lies you've built this town on, the darkness you've forced on us. I was ready to give up my eyes for this, and you never even believed in it yourselves." "It's not that simple," my mother said, her voice soft, almost pleading. "There are consequences for seeing what isn't meant to be seen. We've protected you from that. We've protected everyone." "Protected me from what?" I demanded. "The light? The truth? What's so terrible that you'd blind an entire town to hide it?" My father sighed, running a hand through his hair. For the first time, he looked old to me, weary and burdened by the weight of his secrets. "It's not just the light," he said quietly. "It's what comes with it, what it reveals." Before I could press him further, the door to the waiting room creaked open. An elder stepped inside, their faces severe and inscrutable as ever. They carried an air of authority, the kind that demanded silence without a single word. "What have you done?" the elder asked, their voice low and menacing. Their gaze fixed on me, and I felt the weight of their judgment like a physical force. "Do you have any idea what you've unleashed?" Unleashed. The word sent a shiver down my spine. I looked at the elder, then back at my family. "What are you talking about?" The elder took a step closer, their eyes boring into mine. "The light isn't just light. It's a doorway. By opening your eyes, you've opened that doorway. And now, something is coming through." My heart thundered as the elder's words settled over me like a suffocating shroud. "A doorway?" I repeated, my voice trembling despite my best effort to appear unshaken. "What does that even mean? What could possibly come through light?" The elder's lips pressed into a thin line, their silence more damning than any answer. My father took a tentative step forward, his hand outstretched as though he could physically shield me from what was about to be said. "You've drawn its attention," the elder finally said, their voice heavy with a mix of dread and resignation. "The entity beyond the veil, the one Henry fought to save us from. It sees you now." My throat went dry. "What entity? Are you all insane?" I looked to my family, hoping for some sign of reassurance, some indication that this was all a sick joke. Instead, I found only grim determination etched across their faces. "It's real," my brother said, his tone devoid of the condescension he'd wielded moments ago. Now, he just sounded scared. "We don't know its true name, only what it represents. Chaos, madness, the unraveling of everything we've built." I laughed, though it came out more as a broken, hysterical sound. "And you think blindness is the solution? That hiding from it makes it go away?" "It does," the elder snapped, their voice rising in uncharacteristic anger. "For centuries, it has worked. Henry's sacrifice ensured that as long as we remained in darkness, we would be safe. But you—" They pointed a gnarled finger at me, their eyes narrowing. "You had to defy the rules. You had to see." "Because I'm not a coward," I shot back, my anger flaring. "I won't live my life in fear of some mythical monster. The elder's expression hardened. It's not a myth, and it's already here. As if summoned by their words, the air grew heavy, charged with an unnatural energy. A low, resonant hum began to fill the room, vibrating in my chest and rattling my teeth. The lights flickered, casting distorted shadows that seemed to stretch and twist of their own accord. "What is that?" I whispered, my bravado crumbling as fear took hold. "It's noticed you," my father said, his voice trembling. He reached for me, but I pulled away, stumbling back toward the door. "What do we do?" my mother asked, her composure cracking for the first time. "We can't let it take her." "We may not have a choice," the elders said, their tone icy and resigned. "The damage is done. The only thing we can do now is contain it." "Contain it?" I repeated, panic rising in my chest. "What does that mean? You're talking about me like I'm some kind of disease." "Because you are," the elders said bluntly. "You're a beacon now, a flare in the darkness. It will come for you, and if we don't stop it, it will consume us all." "No," my mother said, stepping between the elder and me. "There has to be another way. Henry found a way before. We can do it again." "Henry's sacrifice bought us time," the elder said. "Nothing more. And now, that time is up." The hum grew louder, a deep, guttural sound that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The shadows writhed and coiled, taking on shapes that defied logic and reason. My breath hitched as one of them stretched toward me, its edges flickering like flame. "We need to act now," the elder barked. "Restrain her before it fully manifests." My family hesitated, their loyalty to me warring with their fear of what was coming. I took the opportunity to bolt, shoving past the elder and into the hallway beyond. The world outside the waiting room was a blur of light and color, overwhelming my unaccustomed eyes. I didn't care. I had to get away. Behind me, I heard my brother shout, "Stop her!" Footsteps thundered after me, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. The hum followed me, growing louder, more insistent. The shadows slithered along the walls, always just at the edge of my vision. I didn't know where I was going. All I knew was that I couldn't let them take me. Not until I understood what was happening, what I had truly unleashed. For the first time in my life, I could see, and I wasn't about to give that up, no matter the cost. The world outside the waiting room was a labyrinth of light and shadow, overwhelming in its complexity. Every corner of the town, once familiar in darkness, now felt alien and exposed. I stumbled through streets I had memorized by touch, the vividness of the colors and shapes assaulting my senses. Behind me, the hum intensified, a relentless pulse that seemed to synchronize with my heartbeat. The shadows were no longer confined to the walls. They had substance now, slithering across the ground like living things. I could feel them reaching for me, brushing against my skin with an unnatural chill. "Stop," a voice called out. It was my father, his tone desperate. "You're only making it worse. Stay away from me." I shouted back, my voice raw with fear and defiance. I turned a corner and found myself in the town square. It was a place I'd known intimately, but in the light, it was transformed. The statue of Henry, our supposed savior, loomed over the square, his blindfolded visage casting a long shadow. For the first time, I noticed the cracks in his stone form, the imperfections hidden by darkness. The shadows converged, pooling around the base of the statue. From the darkness, a figure began to emerge. It was humanoid, but its proportions were wrong, too tall, too thin, its limbs bending at impossible angles. Its face was a void, a swirling blackness that seemed to devour the light around it. "What are you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the deafening hum. The figure tilted its head, as if considering me. Then, it spoke, its voice a chorus of whispers. "I am what you've called forth. I am what you were never meant to see." I took a step back, my knees trembling. "This is a mistake. I didn't mean to." "But you did," it interrupted, the whispers slicing through the air like knives. "And now, you must choose." "Choose," I repeated, my voice shaking. "The light or the dark," it said. "One will consume you. The other will consume them." Behind me, I heard my family and the elder approaching, their footsteps frantic. "Don't listen to it," the elder shouted. "It lies. It only seeks to destroy." "Do they lie?" the figure asked, its tone almost amused. "Did they not blind you, bind you, force you to live in ignorance? Who is truly the destroyer here?" I looked back at my family, their faces etched with fear and desperation. Then I looked at the figure, its form shifting and writhing like smoke. "What happens if I choose the light?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. "You will see everything," it said, "the truth in all its terrible beauty, but they will not survive it." "And the dark?" "You will return to ignorance," it said, "blind, but safe, and they will live." My chest tightened. The choice was impossible. Could I condemn an entire town for my own curiosity, my need to see the truth? Or would I sacrifice my newfound sight to protect them? "Time is fleeting," the figure said, its voice echoing in my mind. "Choose." The hum grew louder, the shadows pressing in around me. My family called my name, their voices a cacophony of pleas and warnings. I closed my eyes, blocking out the chaos, and took a deep breath. In that moment of stillness, I made my decision. When I opened my eyes, the figure was gone, the hum silenced. The town square was empty, save for the faint whispers of the wind. My family stood frozen, their expressions a mix of relief and confusion. "What did you do?" my mother asked, her voice trembling. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The weight of my choice pressed down on me, a burden I would carry alone. Whether I chose light or darkness, truth or ignorance, didn't matter. The world had changed, and so had I. The shadows lingered at the edges of my vision, a constant reminder of what I had seen, of what I could never unsee. As I turned and walked away, I knew one thing for certain. There was no going back.